Hello, are we live? Hello, hello, hello.
It normally takes a sec.
How's it? Well, it
I
says
don't
it's
know.
live on the screen, so
Can
you've got it.
if there's any sign of life in the comments, let us know.
Oh, we are prepared. I am not prepared. Well, I am prepared, but I'm also not prepared. Story of my life, honestly, chaotic. But this is my first live. I am totally not shitting my pants.
Oh yeah, I forgot your first live. I was like,
It
you've used
is.
StreamYard before, but it's your first.
It is, yeah. Because I did one author interview with a friend. So, and that's what I used StreamYard for. But I didn't go live because I was too chicken at that point, too scared. Oh, hello, Jade. Hello, everybody.
Hey Kayla.
But yes, we are talking about the smut today. Going into the juicy little steamy scenes of books. Because we've been talking about this for literally like months now, non-stop.
Yeah.
We have a lot of thoughts. We have a very lot of thoughts.
And naturally, with our sultry sexiness, we're definitely the right people to be talking about.
Oh, of course, the asexual and the bisexual. That's going to work, isn't it?
Completely.
That's going to go well. Yeah. So I have my notes. And shall we get what?
I should probably pull up the notes as well. That should be sensible. We'll pretend I'm ready for this. I'm so prepared for this.
So prepared.
Professional.
We're professional people, you know.
We are. I am very professional at being a person, actually, you'll find.
Oh, yes.
All right.
So,
anyway,
Smut. Smutty, smitey, smitey? Smexy. Trying to say smexy. Whatever we're going with it. You learn that I struggle to talk. We love Smut. We like reading Smut. Currently, I am writing a romantasy. So, I have no idea where I was going with the train of thought. I just looking at my notes, and the first thing on the list is consent,
which arguably should be the most important part of Smut.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny. Well, it's not really funny actually. How it's not really written that much.
No,
it's getting better.
Not with emphasis.
No, it is definitely getting better. But yeah, it's not. I mean, you have the big shadow daddies that are usually toxic, which it's fine if that floats your boat. But it's also like, where's the conversation around that?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think, like most things, it needed to kind of slowly work its way into being mainstream before it did used to be kind of like just the naughty books that you hid under your mattress. So you did need something that felt quite similar to the non-smutty stuff. Almost, you needed something that felt like all the romances that we've been seeing. You needed Twilight plus, you know. So I understand how it came to be that way. How we started out with it being literally just hot and steamy and it not really having much of a thematic discussion. But I think that we've been in the trenches long enough now that we could probably emerge with a bit more of a conversation.
Yeah, and I do think that's weirdly helped a little bit by the queer romances that's been coming out. At least some of the stuff I'm sort of very new into the like just the romance genre. I've read a lot of romantasy, but from what I have read from both, like if you took Freya Mask, I am going to mention Heater Rivalry probably a lot in this video. It's a normal obsession. Both of them, that's just examples, like really handled like the consent well without being like very rigid in how it was portrayed as being like, because you know, like, because sometimes you read a couple of books and it is a little bit rigid in how it's done, and it's like it doesn't really, kind of ruins the flow a little bit, which it still needs to be there. But I'm also sort of like, just how, like, just checking in just now and again, just making sure I'd be like, you cool, you okay with this is cool, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially when you think a lot of romantasy books is the big hot shadow daddy and the virgin female main character.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we've been doing a better job as well of like stepping away from the from it being boxed into heteronormativity, and like there is something to be said for taboo romances and what they may or may not bring to the forefront. But I think if you are looking into anything that doesn't fit the normal parameters of heteronormativity, so queer characters, poly characters, be it BDSM, where there's multiple partners, any of those things, as soon as you step outside of the norm, the conversation is almost necessary, because you need to prove that just the existence of queerness or just the existence of poly or BDSM isn't inherently bad.
Yeah.
So they need to almost go that extra step to show that it's all consensual, that it's all still romantic, and that everyone involved is approving, which bleeds into the idea of heteronormativity. It makes you believe that, oh, because it's a guy and a girl, everyone knows what you're supposed to do. You don't need to check in. It's natural. And that in itself creates a problem, because then you believe that it's natural. And then if you believe that it's natural, you believe it should come naturally.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do feel like you're almost missing, especially with the heteronormative stuff, because you kind of see it a little bit in the queer, right? On the like vulnerability within those moments and the deep character connections. Because like, I mean, I'm not reading it for the hotness, okay? I'm reading it for the character moments. And I feel like, you know, even if you're not attracted to the queer, like you're straight and you're reading queer or whatever, you're not necessarily, I don't know, I'm not speaking for straight women because I'm asexual, but it feels like they have to put more effort into those scenes and those character moments compared to what hetero are doing,
because
because
they need
it's
to
just,
it's worth putting the scene
yeah,
in to begin with.
yeah. And I feels like because it's norm in a sense, hetero, because it's I mean, queer is slowly taking over the genre a little bit. There's more queer coming out, but I feel like more mainstream stuff is very hetero. So it's very much like, oh, we can put this in here and it's hot and we don't have to put work into the characters.
Yeah.
Whereas like it's the character and the deep like vulnerability in like just
Well, I think it's not even necessarily that they don't need to put in the work for the characters, because there are some great hetero romances out there. It's just that normally it separates the two. Normally the sex is there to be hot and steamy and sexy, and then other moments are there for vulnerability and for emotional stakes. They don't normally marry the two. They don't normally merge the two together. There aren't that many scenes where someone is being vulnerable in a sexually explicit moment. The two scenes are normally separate, but you see a lot more of that as soon as you step away from regular heteronormativity.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see more of those vulnerable moments that speak a little bit to realistic moments in life, but still keeping that kind of fantasy element of like, this is, you know, we're still the characters, it's still hot, while showing those kind of like insecurity moments as well. Especially when you think about like, I mean, I know I did. I was reading way too young an age on things. So that's how, again, because it's also a safe way to kind of explore that kind of topic, because so many people, I'd imagine still nowadays, still don't want to talk about it with either their children, or their children don't want to talk about it with like parents or friends or whatever. You're sort of blindly fumbling your way through everything. Whereas like reading a book like this can be like, oh, this is perfectly normal to have this, and this is how, and again, showing the consent on it is very good, because especially if you take like neurodivergent children, they're more likely to be abused because of how their brain works.
The signals,
so when you add this kind of, the consent is there, the consent is important, and you can say no at any point, it kind of is reinforcing that, oh, actually and it's just adding that like little sense of security as well. And it would be quite nice to see, because it is, you are seeing it more with like queer, but it's slowly coming into the hetero space, I think, definitely, because
but I think even then there's normally an additional diversity element before someone bothers. It's a neurodivergent character, it's a disabled character, it's a character of color, there's normally an additional, like if it's just a cis straight guy and a cis straight girl, still the vast majority are like, oh yeah, that's how it works. There's no breaking it down. Like even when you see them losing their virginity, right, even when we're getting to the point where, like, it took me 3 attempts to lose my virginity because it king hurts.
It does. Oh my god.
And no one's telling you that. Like they say, oh, it hurts. And in the films it's like she goes for a second and then that's it and she's over with it. And it's like, no.
And it's still kind of the same, like a little bit in the romantasy space as well. Like, I've read a couple of books where it was sort of like, oh, the guy was like, oh, I didn't know. And I was like, you weren't that aware of your partner that you didn't know that she was flinching in fear. No, not fear, in pain. Like in pain.
Yeah.
Like you have to be that, like, how did you not know? That's like huge red flag for me. I'm sorry. Just highlighting this comment. Yeah, in the most smut I've read, it's so rare for there to be any discussions about any part of the relationship, let alone explicitly regarding consent. It's usually also surface level. It's such a good point.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's usually just like a throwaway line. A kind of like, I call it like the token, like inclusivity.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, we have to put this in, so let's like be token this, and it's just like,
if we're going to actually start incorporating sex into YA, which was a topic we were going to talk about, and I do think that YA should have sex in it. I know that that's quite a controversial take. I think it should. I think that there are a lot of kids at home that don't have access to information and conversations, and reading can save your life. So I think it should be in books. I think, the queer community have already cottoned on. The queer community they know that there are a lot of kids out there that are not going to know a single thing about their body and their wants and their needs at home, and a book's going to be the way they find that out. Why are we not doing that for straight people?
Exactly.
But just because it's the norm doesn't mean that you don't need the information, because at the end of the day it would be very awkward if you go into sex ed class and your teacher is telling you about positions. Like that's not appropriate education. Like that's not a conversation you have with someone you do not have that kind of relationship with. But someone needs that information. You still need the information about, okay, this will hurt, this will do this position can alleviate this, if this hurts, change to this. How are you supposed to get that information if your parents won't talk about it, and you're not in a position where you want to have those conversations with your parents? And you definitely should not be having that conversation in school. So a lot of us rely on someone else we know that's like a couple years older that's had to make a load of mistakes and suffer pain or embarrassment or even like abuse if you've had a partner that was not kind to you about any of those experiences going wrong. They've had to learn a really, really hard lesson, and then you have to be lucky enough to be their friend that they're going to pass that down to you so you can avoid some of those mistakes and make your own ones instead.
No, exactly. And I think it's also a very good way. I mean, I don't know necessarily if it's going to come across in books, but I think it would also be a nice discussion to have around these books on certain conditions that can form around having sex as well, and what is deemed normal, or what you might perceive as normal if you are uneducated, to realize, oh, actually, maybe this is not necessarily a normal thing. Because it's like, we read so many diverse stories and it helps, and it should help a lot of people empathize with those kind of stories and what they suffer. So then you understand things like racism and homophobia and what's going on. It doesn't necessarily mean it's affecting your life, but you can kind of look at that and go, oh, actually, that's the thing that's happened. Well, also, I think there needs to be stories that is just full of like queer and black joy and all of this as well. Adding that sort of a couple of little like subplot lines of an example of being like, oh yeah, this is a condition that somebody has, like, if you've got like, you're suffering with like endometriosis is a big example, is a very big one, that can normalize a lot of things, but also understanding that when you have these conditions, it can also make being intimate more difficult, and it's also not a problem either.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, completely.
Consent is fucking sexy.
It's so sexy.
It's so hot, and I say this as an asexual woman.
We were having a conversation about this yesterday, actually, about consent being really sexy. And one of the reasons that I actually kind of enjoy reading well-written and well respected BDSM is less to do with the actual pain part, because that doesn't do it for me. It's the consent part. It's the checking in. Like, if someone says, you know, do you remember your safe word? That means shit's about to get real. You know, it's about to hit the fan, and that's hot. You know, it means that, okay, we're going to take it to the next level now. Then, is that okay with you? Checking in can literally also be like a promise of things to come if you are going about it the right way. But then, just, you know, also that the level of safety that you can feel with someone who's checking in, with someone who is caring about your consent at all times, not just at the beginning, you relax. And as any woman will know, relaxing is a kind of core component of having a good time.
Oh, for sure. And even if it's like you say, like, you know, the pain thing doesn't do it for you with BDSM, but it's also adding that extra character layer on top of it, because you're like, oh, I mean, the bar is low if people are just like, consent, yeah, cool. But it does add, you know, that extra layer. And like, especially as well, like, because you made me read The Losers by Harley LaRue.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, my first kind of foray into BDSM, and it was entertaining. I enjoyed myself a lot of the time. But you're adding, you know, multiple times through that process, they check in to be like, at any point you can back out.
Emotionally as well as sexually.
Yeah. And then also, because again, it is BDSM, there's the come down after it as well. So it's kind of like, because there was a moment between two characters when the character was like, you shouldn't be on your own because you're coming down of this, you need to be with somebody. And the other character's like, oh, I'll be fine. But it's like, no, like, come on, like, and then they sort of all did it like together. And that was actually quite nice to see, like, the after effects of that as well, especially on like in a community that we both aren't also a part of, but that makes it, you know, understandable. And how, like, because I think especially when you take it to that next level a little bit, you have to be very, like, communication has to be on point on like what the person likes, what the person doesn't like. Whereas when you just do it like with hetero, it's just assumed that most of the time you'll be fine with everything.
Yeah, exactly. There's too much assumption. The only time I think I have ever read of a guy even slightly asking for consent is if he wants to do something out of the norm. Like, if it's like, I know I'm pushing a boundary here. If it's just regular ordinary sex, I don't think I've ever seen it depicted where there is any kind of verbal confirmation of consent or of continuing. And if there is, it's, you know, she kind of seems hesitant, or she's losing her virginity and she's in a bit of pain, and he'll just quickly be like, you okay? And she'll go, yeah, and then that's it. It's not
because
like, no, can I change anything? Actually, can I do anything to make it better? There's none of that. It's just, you okay? All right, let's continue.
Because this kind of falls into the kind of I don't really want to say it's misogyny, but it's kind of patriarchalism in a sense of how women are always designed to be like, yeah, we're fine, even though we're not, because we are designed constantly to deal with pain as every part of our daily life, right? Like every month, and we are designed to just get on with it and deal with it. Whereas, you know, men never have to deal with that. So, and we all know that losing a virginity is going to be painful. So we're just going to expect this little bit of pain, right? But so when the guy checks in at that point, we tend to always go, yeah, we're fine, even though it's kind of like, well, hang on a minute, can we stop for a second? Like, we don't actually say what we're really feeling at that point, and we're kind of lying in that sort of sense.
It's exactly the same as when you're at work and a colleague you don't really know asks you how you're doing. You're going to say fine. You're not going to be like, actually, I have crippling depression right now. You're just going to be like, yeah, I'm fine. You know, it's exactly,
that would be like,
and your sexual partner should not be on a par with a random work colleague.
No, but that's the thing what so many people do, and probably what so many of us have done, if you have gone through that, you know, experience. But it's just one of those things that I kind of want to get into my life of being like, if people ask me, just being brutally honest with people. Because that shouldn't really be where the bar is. And
yeah, no, exactly, the bar is so
yeah,
low.
yeah, and I kind of feel like, I don't want to kind of project this a little bit, but I kind of feel like men in a sense need to be a little bit more clued in, I think, on
No,
a lot of
exactly.
like
I think
women's
it's
issues.
a whole thing. It's not just, women need to stand up more. It's also like men need educating more. Like we can't assume, especially after the way that it's gone generationally. Like I'm not trying to give men a pass. Like Google's free, But I mean, the way that men have been raised generationally, if we need to unpack not being a carpet that they can walk all over, we also need to help them. Like if we need help unpacking that from ourselves, they also need to unpack some stuff. Like we need this to go both ways. It's not just,
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's women's responsibility, but if we highlight those issues, the hope is the decent ones will then educate themselves.
yeah, yeah, and like it can also go, both ways. And we're not saying women only have issues either. I just feel like ours is more kind of well known and accepted over, what men can sometimes go through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's really interesting the perspective of hetero versus queer relationships. As someone in a queer relationship, my idea of consent feels much different than my time in a hetero sphere. Yeah.
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 All
No.
of my queer encounters have definitely the consent. Even what consent means feels
Yeah.
different.
Oh, for sure. Because I feel
Um,
like a lot of the time with queer, there's just this sense of like one, you have to do probably, I'd imagine, like a little bit of preparation, a little bit of check-in, depending on what queer you're going for. Like if it's like
yeah.
female, male, or whatever. But also there's just an added level of like, because it's not necessarily the norm either, and it's almost perceived a little bit as more like scary sometimes for some people, especially if it's like their first time.
Because there's less information on it. It's depicted
There's less
less,
information out there, so you are going into this sort of,
a bit
you know
more blindly.
yeah, because there really isn't
Well,
any sort
I
of
don't
guide.
think you are. I don't think we're actually going in more blindly. I think we are.
Yes, that's actually a good point, because there is still, because so many people still assume hetero is the norm, so they talk about all of the hetero stuff still.
But they
And
talk about all the hetero stuff, but they talk about the PR approved hetero stuff.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
again, like the way that it's depicted about losing your virginity if you are in a hetero relationship for the female, or anyone, I suppose, with a vagina, is that you would expect pain, but you are never told. Like even if you're told like it's really painful, you
mm,
definitely are taught to expect that it's going to be painful for a brief moment, or that the first time's not going to be great. It doesn't tell you that it takes a load of time, and that if your partner don't work on it, it's not really gonna get better.
yeah,
And that is,
exactly.
well, with queerness, at least from my experience, I don't know
Mm.
anyone else, my experience with queerness. So in hetero relationships, you have the idea of bases, right? Everyone talks about the
Yeah.
bases. You got first, second, third
Yeah.
base. In queerness, it feels like there's like 10. It feels like there's a million bases, because every new thing feels like a base. It feels like a new thing that you kind of check in on. It's like, and now is this okay?
Yeah.
And now is this okay? But with male entitlement, there is a lot of just like, okay, you consented to your body, and I only know that butt stuff is the stuff that's off the cards. Like everything else is just expected. While with queer ones, because I guess it's again, because I'm coming from my queerness being female, mine is very much like, is this something that you like and that you want, or are you only doing this because we've been on the receiving end of it? Are you doing this for my pleasure or yours? Because if it's not
Yeah.
both, it's not good.
No, exactly. And I mean, there's so many things that people can go into like deep discussions in, and like like I said, like consent feels easier in my opinion. Like it's easier to talk about, easier to initiate, it's much more comfortable, which because I feel like there's more conversations around that, like when you go into like BDSM, for example, with like reading this book, there was very much you go into a safe space to learn about how to do that safely.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the time with a lot of, going into spaces just naturally on your own, it doesn't necessarily always feel as safe as it should be, because these conversations because then people don't want to talk about it. Even then, like, it's one of those things you just don't talk about. You might have talk about it a little bit with like your girlfriends and stuff, but like even talking about, so using like a little bit of my experience of like how I learned I was asexual, it was hearing everybody else talk about that experience and me going, that is not my experience at all. Thinking, what the hell happened? What's gone wrong? Doing my own research to realize, oh, nothing went wrong. It was just I was asexual. But
especially because, sadly, because so many girls have rough experiences, it's so much easier for you to gaslight yourself for longer, that it's just like, oh, was he not the right guy, or did he just not know how to sort me out, and it goes on for so much longer because we're deemed more complicated, and then it's harder to define your sexuality. Like I said, I did not realize I was bisexual until I was in my 20s, even though by then I had sex with women. Just because it's like, but they're hot, of course they are, but how does that make me bisexual? It's like, because sex with both. Right. It's just
it's just like, that's going back onto the stigma of society as well on most of this, because you're a little bit more into the school sphere technically than I am, because I don't know because when I did sex education, it was literally just like understanding what
I'm in a Catholic country.
That's a very good point. I went to a Catholic school, so you can imagine what that was like. But yeah, like it's very basic, very just like, oh, this is what the vagina is, this is what the dick is, this is what, nothing about queerness at all. And I don't know if that is in education, but I kind of feel like it needs to be at least mentioned in some cases, but they're not going to do it, are they? What people are like. Nobody likes talking about it. Kids think it's funny to talk about.
But the problem is that actually schools have a hard time with it, because obviously different parents have different stigma, different religions, different degrees that they think would be acceptable. The ages they think those conversations would be acceptable varies from parent to parent. It also varies from child to child, to be fair. Of my children, there will be kids that will have conversations about sex with sooner or later, based on their maturity level. Like, obviously I don't know that yet, because they're all under the age where they, like they know sex is a thing, because we're open about that, because I don't want them to feel uncomfortable with the topic. But I've not felt the need to go further beyond just it exists at the moment, because my eldest has just turned 11. But I know that they're going to have different experiences, and they're going to be interested in sex at different stages, and they're all close in age. So it might be that a younger one needs that information before an older one. Not that I'm withholding the information, but they'll ask questions before their older sibling will, if that is how it arises. So it varies from kid to kid. So it's quite difficult for schools to accomplish that, to be fair to schools. So they do need to just give like very basic information, but the basic information should include the existence of queer identities. But again, schools find that very difficult boundary to cross, because of parents. Parents are the ones that make it difficult, not really schools.
No, exactly. And I think, that's where the whole, you have the stigma against queerness as well, but you also have the stigma against like the full topic as well. And that's where I think, again, heading back to like, it should be in YA to have that safe space to explore these kind of, this topic without being like, oh, nobody would talk to me about it, and not having, information should be easily accessible to anybody.
Lack of information always opens us up for abuse.
No, exactly. And I think that's how a lot of
vulnerable people.
Because people get somebody coerced. You see people get abused all the time, when it could have almost been, I mean, granted, they should not have been abused, but it might have helped them realize, oh, hang on a minute, there's this red flag.
That's the thing. People don't even realize they've been abused. Like, it's not just that it opens them up to abuse. It's that sometimes they don't realize they're being abused. Like, it's that bad. It's not just it opened you up to this really traumatic, horrific event that you could learn from. Sometimes it takes years, it takes an entire relationship to fall apart before you realize abuse, because we don't have information.
Yeah, and
Information is
also
what
that's when
saves
when you
people.
get stuck into that cycle of staying with an abuser as well.
Yeah.
Because you don't notice the early red flags of like,
And then it's
oh,
too late by
hang
the
on a minute.
time you get, yeah.
And it's just like cycle goes again and again and again. You know, which is, you know, it's horrible, but it does exist, annoyingly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've kind of touched a little bit on gender, haven't we? I'm going to cough. I'm really sorry. Oh,
Wasn't
all
my
of a sudden
biscuits.
all of a sudden my voice just went. But yeah, we've already touched a little bit on gender, but there's
I
definitely a
think,
lot of expectations still, isn't there?
yeah,
Put
I would
on,
say so.
yeah, put on
On
compared to
both
literally just,
genders as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Because
if we
I
if we're
think
saying, yeah,
I, th- I
you have a lot better thoughts than I do. Go on, continue.
I think with guys, the problem I mentioned this to you the other day. One of the problems that comes with discussing consent for men is that they are taught that they are supposed to be the ones that know their shit. No one gives
Yeah,
them information. They're supposed to just know stuff. So then you have guys that either they're like, well, how do I find out? I guess I'll watch porn, which is not ideal for educational purposes. Could be for
no,
entertainment. There are some that can be, to be fair. I'm not a completely anti-porn person, but you know, it's not necessarily the best place to go for education.
yeah,
So
yeah,
then you have guys, and so then they're learning the wrong things, and no one's guiding them, but they're supposed to know what they're doing. So then if a girl comes in and she's like, oh, that hurts, or I don't like that, or I don't enjoy that, the guy immediately is put in a position of, I'm bad at sex and I'm failing as
yeah,
a man. Like,
yeah,
that's what patriarchy has taught them. So women feel like they can't tell guys what they need or what they want or what they don't want because they'll offend the guy,
yeah,
because he has been conditioned by society that he is an actual failure if he's not doing it correctly.
yeah. But then you also get into the kind of, men don't even know where the clitoris is, or even what the fuck it is
Yeah.
in some cases. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's basic information. Like, you should
Yeah.
know more about your other partner
Yeah.
than most
I
people
think,
do. And
yeah. I mean, with that as well, it's but like I said, I think the problem is that it's fed to men, like from a really young age, that they should know.
yeah,
And that's the
yeah,
problem. It's less it's not that I don't think that guys could be more proactive. They should be more
yeah,
proactive, but patriarchy hurts everyone, and I think that that's something that doesn't get discussed enough, especially because, like, if you read a book that's written by a woman, right, there's never been a guy on there that is the love of the girl's life but can't find the clitoris.
no,
There's never
no,
a guy in
exactly.
romantasy that she needs to guide him. She needs to show him a little bit. He's not sure what he's doing. She needs to give him a hand, and it doesn't emasculate him. It doesn't make him any less sexy. That it doesn't get shown.
No, no, no. But but also what doesn't get shown is weirdly the vulnerability of those moments from the male perspective. If you're just
Yeah,
talking about hetero, well, I
yeah,
mean, you can talk about it even with right? Because
yeah,
they expect women to be that kind of way, but they never expect the men to be that way. Which
yeah,
was when I watched Heated Rivalry and read it, it was really kind of surprising that Shane, granted he's also autistic, but was like being really vulnerable and showing these vulnerable moments. And then you have Ilya, who was just checking in and really sure, like reassuring him in a way without being like, oh, it's like coercing him into something either, of just being like, yeah, we're cool, it's fine, we'll take it slow, or like, cool, okay, we won't do it, like, it's not a problem. Immediately backing off when he was like a bit too unsure or not ready for that kind of moment yet, where I do find
yeah,
like a lot of the time with hetero, and like in to be fair, like hetero does have kind of this big shadow daddy complex in
yeah.
romantasy.
So there's a lot of, like, he knows what he's doing at all times.
Yeah,
He is the perfect partner. Which,
yeah,
don't get me wrong, I'm all for fantasy fulfillment. You know, like guys have it, why can't girls? But if we're going to bother putting sex in books, we should be putting a variety of sex in books, and we should be
Yeah,
showing
this is the
the
thing.
whole spectrum of sex. I don't have anything against really basic shadow daddy missionary sex. I don't care. I really don't. I don't care when she's, you know, screaming his name or climaxing 15 times in one sesh because he's so good. I don't care, you know? But if we're going to bother including sex, it's a thought we could be including it for a reason.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you add, like, because I'm going to give a brief kind of, not an example, but in my book, what my male character is suffering a lot with PTSD, and that is affecting most of his life, and it is also going to show a vulnerability on the bedroom side of things as well, compared to like the woman. So the woman's going to be the one of being like, it's going like reassuring him, making sure he's not like triggered by anything, right? Because of what happened, he had a traumatic childhood. So that's like, again, there's so many things, because reading Tough Guy by Rachel Reed, which is the only one that's coming into my mind that has done this, is they had a conversation around anxiety in the bedroom, and how the guy was like, I might struggle to complete. I need reassurance because of my anxiety. I need all of this. And they had that conversation, like, quite not really upfront, but before anything happened, to be like, look, you know, because this is going to happen. Don't worry about it. Like, don't, you know, judge yourself if you know, I go through these things. And I kind of feel like that it would be really nice to see that explored on both sides of it as well. And it's just, and like most of the, I mean, like you said before, it's usually the queers or you know, the diversity people do it first over the heteronormative people.
Because
it's just
it takes the established quo so much longer to change anything, because it's what's always been done. While something that is already inherently not, like anything that is inherently other is already other. It's not kept in the constraints. But I mean, talking of gender, the thing is as well is like, as soon as you incorporate any kind of gender diversity, right? So obviously, yes, within queer romance, but also if you include like trans characters or non-binary characters, then you also have dysphoria to deal with. So then that inherently changes the dynamic of sex, because you have to deal with, not necessarily, obviously there is surgery in fantasy, they sometimes have people switch bodies and things, but in the real world you do have the dysmorphia can sometimes still be there. One of the creators that I watch is his name is Jamie Rains. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's talked about his sex life before, and that when he first realized that he was trans, he had a lot of dysphoria, and it would lead into the sex life, because that's when you're naked. And obviously that's also when your reproductive organs matter.
They're gonna, that's where everything's gonna, and I mean, that's actually something I would actually love to see, to be fair, and I think it is in more romance over romantasy, is trans romance, and how people handle that, like you say, with the dysphoria, handle that conversation, and whatnot, what's going on, because you know, I understand, we all understand a bit about it, but I feel like hearing it from that lived experience will definitely make us kind of empathize a little bit more and have a deeper understanding. You know, because not everybody wants to do research or read nonfiction, so it's also another avenue of you know, teaching people.
Exactly.
Seeing perfect sex in books all the time is kind of like getting a skewed version of women and sex from porn. You're always going to feel you're not doing those things right. That is so true. I could not agree
completely
more. Yeah, because like the amount of, like, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, I don't understand it, okay? But when using Quicksilver an example, like the smut in that is not written very well, but every single time it was the same type of sex, but also the main character was like, oh, I screamed like my pleasure all the time, or I'm going to be like so loud. Like, it's like kind of like Rhys in A Call to Mist and Fury, right? had been like with the mountains shaking and whatever, and always bringing down the mountains. And I feel like there's a point where, yeah, you can show people enjoying their pleasure, but there's also a point that it gets a little bit over the top, especially how it's written and how it's described, where it's just like,
again, I think if you're doing it just for gratuitous purposes, if it is just this is hot, because like those scenes to me are written as sex scenes that sole purpose is this is hot. You're not you're not talking, it's not a conversation about sex, it's not a conversation even about romance. It is just sex is hot, and sex is allowed to be hot, you know, and I am okay with those things. My problem is that, as Emma says, it's the fact it's all the time. It's that it's always perfect sex. You know, losing your virginity hurt for a second. You climax 10 times because the guy knows exactly what he's doing. And the thing is that the whole, like, the guy knows exactly what he's doing. You always have guys that know exactly what they're doing with your body, which then leads to the idea that if a guy slept with a load of women, he'll know what he's doing. That's not true. It's not true. And a lot of the time, couples, they need a couple tries to figure out what works for them, because bodies are different. People's points of ecstasy are different. What works for one person doesn't work for another person all the time.
But then you also have, like, when you have, let's say you've got the two partners together and that's the first time being together, there's going to be that sense of awkwardness until you learn each other's body language, moves, you know, things aren't always going to flow well. Until you understand that. And then, you know, you get the case of when you've been with somebody for so long, you know them so well that you know exactly what their pleasure is like, and you know how to give them that when it's just.
And the problem with these books is that it bleeds into a kind of more difficult narrative of the, like, love conquers all, right? If you love a person, then you'll come together in perfect harmony. And then it's like, okay, so if I don't come the first time, does that mean he don't love me, or that I don't love him? You know, it's like, that's not how it works. You know, like, surely the most romantic thing you can do is take your time to learn each other's bodies properly, to know what you want from each other, to have that vulnerability, to make mistakes. Like, even making mistakes can be hard if you can get through it together.
Yeah, but I also think that comes back to the communication, though. With anything, because it's, as you said before, hetero is just like, oh, this is just how it is. We know what we're doing, or like the guy's assumed to know what he's doing because he slept around. It's never really, like, again, and that comes back to misogyny of assuming everything with the guy, because a woman can't sleep around because then she gets called a name, and it's like it's complete double standards on a lot of things. But you know, we're not really that far out of the kind of married off to a man, women have the vote, all of this, so, and allowed to have pleasure either, which, you know,
I mean, to be fair to the Victorians, they knew what they were doing, because they said you're more likely to conceive if you came.
Okay, I didn't know that about Victorians.
Yeah. I don't like the Victorians. You know, I don't like the Victorians, but they literally spread that, where it was like, listen, you want me to make you your babies, you gotta make me come. It helps. They even for a while there, they tossed around the rumor of it being more likely to be a boy if she climaxed multiple times. Like, they knew what they were doing. These girls knew what they were doing.
Guarantee you that was a woman who started that conversation.
100%, probably Victoria herself.
Probably, yeah.
With a load of sons, absolutely besotted with her husband and a load of sons. She definitely just went around telling all her girls, like, apparently, all you have to do is come. I betcha.
Bet you bottom dollar that was her. Love Queen Vicky. Bless her.
But yeah, the next point was that romance is angled mostly at women, right?
Yeah. Which also brings to the conversation of, is romance and romanticy and smut open for men? Which the quick answer is going to be yes. But I feel like a lot of men feel like they're gatekept a little bit out of the genre.
Well, given the way that gay men get treated, which is, it's not even like that. Like, it's not even like that is a I don't want to, I suppose, make it sound like men are worse than they are, but women don't. Women feel safer around gay men than they do straight men,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Like a
yeah,
lot of us,
sure.
if we want to get absolutely hammered, we'd go to a gay bar, right? Because we know we're not going to get assaulted.
Yeah.
And so if we're gatekeeping gay men, it's not a welcoming environment for straight men.
No, because I mean, when you look at a lot of the queer stories, like MN romance, for example, it is mainly written by women, which in and of
For
itself is not
women.
for women, which is not a problem. But I think the problem is when we don't allow men to come in and write their own stories on that aspect. And I understand sometimes you
Yeah.
kind of think, because I'm not being like, I'd even say straight men could write it. I'm not saying it has to just be
Yeah.
queer. But it does get to the point of a lot of people are going to be very hesitant because of how women have been written in literature before and how we have been treated within literature and in real life from men. So, and you have, because then there's this added layer to this as well, is like if somebody who you assume is straight but hasn't come out yet but is writing these queer stories, it kind of is adding that pressure onto, I can't publish this until I officially come out, because people are going to be
Yeah.
up in
No,
arms. I
I
feel like a
don't
lot of
think.
people would be up in arms over it.
Yeah,
A
I mean,
little
I
bit, you
don't.
know what I mean?
I'm not quite so concerned about the sexual orientation of the author,
Yeah.
unless they are very clearly making an entire career off of something. I've said this to you before. Like any other time where there's
Mm.
like clearly a cis woman, so who has never lived as a man, is only writing male romances.
Yeah.
We would be really grossed out if men did that.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
a
It's
man,
double standards,
his
isn't it?
whole career was only writing lesbian women in steamy romances, we'd all be a bit concerned.
Yeah.
So I don't have any again, I like Everina Maxwell. So far she's got 2 books out, and they're both by they're both about gay men. They're both about gay relationships. They're Achillean. But I like the way they're depicted. They felt like 2 men. It didn't feel like a straight romance with salad dressing on it. It very much felt like it was a queer romance, and I appreciated that. But for me, the thing is that as soon as you get into the territory of that's all you're writing, it's I don't know how much of this is a little bit of my experiences as a bi woman, because we are
Yeah.
generally objectified almost more than anyone else, because there's that you can have a
Yeah.
threesome idea.
Yeah. But there's also the added fact that there's not a lot of sapphic in romantasy, as an
Yeah,
example. There is a little bit more in romance genre, but in the romantasy, it's usually or hetero.
yeah,
A lot of the time.
yeah.
I mean, there's
Sapphic's
probably a
very
couple,
Sapphic is
but
there's quite a lot of Sapphic in the like straight up fantasy, straight up
yeah,
sci-fi, but in the romantasy, like in the romantic genres and
yeah,
subgenres, it's definitely very underrepresented.
yeah, for sure. And I don't. I mean, there's probably a lot of reasons why. I find that I feel like a lot of straight women who are writing these kind of books gravitate more to male over probably women.
Yeah,
Just probably because it's where the sexual orientation is as well. But also I feel like they like the male like act of them having sex, in a sense, seems easier for them to understand and write compared to sapphic, in my opinion. Like,
mm,
so there's, I don't know, there feels like there's almost more of a bridge for a lot of people to sort of go over that, and because then you can have it. But then, like, we read a book once together that had a smut seed from the hetero but not from the sapphic
yeah,
written,
yeah,
and
we did.
I was like, that was telling.
Yeah, like all
So
three of us, you, me, and Rachel, we all I think we all picked up on that independently as well. Like it
yeah,
wasn't a one of us said it and the rest of us noticed it. I think we kind of after we'd all finished discussed it and was like, that's a thing that happened. So it was like very glaring. It wasn't just,
yeah,
oh yeah, that's kind of weird. It was like 2 full chapters of the 2 straight characters getting it on, and then
yeah.
like a fade to black the sapphic one.
Yeah, which is just like, it's these little things that I think can really help with that you can improve and also help with representation at the same time. You know, because we're not expecting everything to be brilliant. Like most of the smut I read that's hetero is not written well, so we're not expecting everything to be written like,
but I think that's the thing. I do
whatever.
think that diverse people are held to higher standards.
There is also that, I feel like they you know, they have to add more to the character world building and everything, which is why I gravitate more towards gay romantic stories, because it tickles that kind
of what Emma's saying here about historical. So historical, it makes sense that there's more sapphic, especially more sapphic than male, because it was easier to be sapphic. It was not actually an arrestable offense for women to have sex, like to be sapphic. I mean, most women didn't have the freedom to do so, and it wouldn't have been considered, it wouldn't have been looked on very friendly, but it was not an arrestable offense. It was an arrestable, and depending on the situation, you could be executed depending on the time period, for sodomy, which is Achillean sex. And so a woman could get arrested for dressing up as a man, but she could have sex with a woman. Like, obviously it wasn't an accepted thing in society. It wasn't like, here's my girlfriend, but it wasn't an arrestable offense. There are quite a few situations in which, for example, women are buried together because they are best friends. Or
that's what I say, especially it's probably easier to kind of hide it as well, because it's more natural for women to be very close compared to
exactly. And as soon as you get into the queer panics, any of the times that there's been a queer panic, so like there have been several occasions throughout history, mostly when there's a religious spike or anything like that, there'll just suddenly be like a gay panic, and it will be very much like, I can't be seen as gay. So like different periods of time, there have been men that like will lounge about together, will lie in bed together, will hug each other, will hold hands. Like throughout history, like straight men, that was happening, it was not a problem. And then occasionally there are the like queer panics where people will suddenly be like, okay, I don't want you anywhere near me because I don't want to get accused. So if you're talking like, especially like in the Victorian and Regency era, the men were very foppish. The men were quite feminine. Like a masculine man actually had quite what we would now deem feminine traits, but back then they were deemed masculine traits. Like the type of clothes they'd wear, they'd have lots of bows on them, for example, in the 1700s, and like the big sleeves and all those kinds of things that now would completely be deemed feminine. Pink was a masculine color in history.
I knew that. Pink was always boys.
So with that
a lot of men actually.
No, exactly. So I think for me with that, it's just that being sapphic was not only easier, women already had a hard time. So they were like, if you were in a position where you could have a female lover, right, where you could go and live out in the countryside with your best friend, you know, and you could be two spinsters together, or a widow and her companion. That was the thing, women always had companions, right? And you had a companion because it was very inappropriate for you to be in the presence of a man alone. So most of the time you didn't live alone, because then you can't answer the door to a man, because like maids and stuff don't count. It's not the same hierarchy, so you can't just have your maid in the room with you. So there would be a lot of situations where you would have a companion, so it'd be perfectly normal for someone to go live with you, maybe someone who is down on their luck and hasn't got much money. If you've got a lot of money and you're a wealthy widow or you're a wealthy spinster, there's this, you know, this woman who doesn't have a lot of money, well, she's going to come live with me as my companion, and no one's going to question it. But men, they're not in the same social position where it would be necessary for another man to live with him.
I also feel like even today there's more of a not necessarily stigma, but pressure on men to act like men. So if they're gay, they're like, oh, wait a second. Which I kind of feel like we just need to get rid of that stigma.
Most gay men, you wouldn't necessarily know they're gay until they tell you. Like if you've hung out with gay, like most of my gay guy friends that I hung out with in my teens, like I only knew they were gay because they had boyfriends, you know, like they weren't like the whole queenie gay thing. Like I'm not saying there aren't queenie gays, and more power to them.
Fair, like
not,
my cousin is very much the Queenie, talk to him, he's gay. But I've got another cousin who's completely opposite. You wouldn't know anything about it.
Exactly.
Like just, so it is a spectrum.
Be people. But like even straight men, some of them are more camp than others. Like I can never fully believe Michael McIntyre is straight.
Exactly.
Like this man has a what?
Yeah.
What?
What's he doing? How? Like, what's happening? Yeah, I know. And it is. And but again, when you add that stigma on what I feel like a lot of Western society, well, probably most of society, is doing, with you have to be a man, you can't cry, you can't show emotions, it bleeds into that whole kind of like, well, your identity, your orientation, your like what is society perceiving me as. And it just ends up being like a vicious cycle. This was a really good comment. I think it's quite interesting that smut and romance is okay for women and usually created for them, but video porn is made for men by men, when a lot of the same topics and genres.
No, exactly. I mean, again, because we actually, one of the conversations that we had preparing for this video was we saw a post where it was kind of saying romance is not porn and they're not equitable or comparable. And the way it was going about it was very, very much like porn is evil kind of thing. And don't get me wrong, it's a very corrupt industry. It's not a safe industry all the time. It's incredible. The post we read was quite disrespectful towards sex workers, because it was very much like only trafficked people would be in this industry, which is problematic in itself. But the thing for me is vilifying sex is vilifying sex. Like, it doesn't matter how it's presented. It doesn't matter how it's presented. It's sex, and there's going to be good sex and there's going to be bad sex, and there's going to be good representations of it and there's going to be bad ones. That's literally how it works, and I think for me, if you're going to have a conversation about how sex is depicted in media and you really want to separate porn from smut, you probably have a little bit of fear that sex is bad.
Because there is also
still underlying sex is bad, porn is bad.
No, there definitely is that, because I mean, if you it's only recently, as you say, probably since the Victorians, that women haven't really been allowed to chase their own pleasure, that they work for the men. If you look at Bridgerton, is a really good example. I remember watching season one of the seasons, that she didn't know what was going to happen at all. She had no idea.
Season one.
She
didn't know about masturbation.
No. And again, a lot of women as well, I feel like there's still a stigma for women just masturbating, even now, even though a lot of the toys is designed for women now. There's still like the stigma of, well, you can't do that on your own.
And that's before you even talk about bringing toys into the bedroom. Like with your partner.
No, exactly. So I mean, we're on the way to things getting better. And that's another thing that I would actually really like to see in books, is more toys, just in like romantasy in general.
Not the stone dildos, though.
Not the stone dildo, no. Nobody knows we're talking about book 2, Can't Spell Trees Without Tea, book 2, Pirate's Life for Tea. I'd had a stone dildo, and that derailed a massive conversation.
We did have a lengthy conversation about the what type of stone we think the stone dildo might be, which was a thing.
That went over like an hour. That's quite funny. But I mean, again, you could show that in a very healthy way at the same time. But you know, there is still, again, as you're saying, there's still that stigma of women having pleasure, of women understanding what's going on, whereas it's just kind of a given that men just have it all the time. And
But that
I feel
also
like,
puts pressure on men. Like if the woman has the higher libido than the man, that is really harmful for both people in the relationship, because it can make the woman think that she's not sexy enough, like she's not attractive enough, because he's not wanting her as much as he's supposed to, because men are supposed to have the higher sex drive. And then for the guy, it's like, was there something wrong with me? Because like I was kind of led to believe I was supposed to be wanting this twice a day, and I'm kind of okay with twice a week.
No, exactly. And then, you know, I feel like the porn conversation around books comes from men and women, as you say, who have this underlying fear at the same time as well. Because I feel like men feel like they can't step into the genre because it's like, oh, I can't read about, you know, sex. And it's like, well, you can. And like Monster Smart, granted, people are like, what do you mean Monster Smart? It's scary. But actually, I feel like the way they show that kind of like the smart side of it is done in, again, it's written for women, mostly for women. But it's done in a very, very well way compared to like romantic. You know, there's a little bit more conversations about things. Granted, you have to suspend your disbelief because it's, you know, Monster Smart. But there seems to be a little bit more kind of, the way it's written is it's just done better, in my opinion. Like the way it's written is better compared to everything else, which probably leads back to the gays have to do a bit more work. Monster Smart, you've got to do a little bit more work as well.
Anything that's not the norm.
Atlanta has some great examples of smart. Lots of different experiences too. Slight spoiler. Sorry, guys. Claire and Jamie are a great example of different in sexual experience. Claire having more than Jamie. Yeah. Well, I've not read it or watched it. I mean, I have got the book, but I haven't read it or watched it. But I probably will because, yeah, I quite like to see kind of things sort of flipped on its head a little bit. Like, you know, as we say a lot of the time, a lot of romantasy is very like male women, with the male being the guy on the top, the male, you know, saving the woman, the male knowing everything. It's quite nice to sort of read something that's just a little bit flipped to then show that a little bit more of like vulnerability. The opposite of getting versed with good sex depicted all the time in media is that you don't see yourself often. That is very true. Yeah, I feel like seeing yourself, I mean, we all know I can't talk. Representation is important. But it never really seems to flow through into this side of the page, the bedroom, whatever you want to call it.
I think also when we're talking about always having perfect sex, it means that then you're not showing anyone how to get better, like, because I don't mean it in a structural manual of like, put this in here. I mean more in the sense of learning each other's body language, learning what seems to go well, learning the correct communication skills that aren't going to kill the mood, but that are going to improve the experience.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you do need to kill the mood. Sometimes you just be like, no, we're not doing that. That hurt, or that's uncomfortable, or I don't like it, or anything. That is fine. Yeah. But sometimes you're like, I'm liking this, but not enough, and I need a little bit of just a little adjustment, you know, and that's fine. And sometimes you just need to be able to kind of communicate that, because you can communicate with your body. It doesn't have to be literally like, could you move your hand 2 inches to the left? Thank you.
Yeah.
Like it can just be like adjusting yourself or moving their hand for them, or, you know, like even with your body, you can improve the experience.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be unsexy, but just he immediately, boom, knows the button because he's like a human magnet for it. It's like, well, it's not teaching anyone anything, and is it? We're not actually learning about sex. We're not getting a real sex experience from here. We're getting porn. So when people are like, smart isn't porn, it's like, tell me how. How is this sexy? And like, you know, the post that we've read where it's like, it shows vulnerability and stuff like that. It's like, some of them do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Some
Yeah.
of them are brilliant for showing vulnerability, character development. Even you get to see their inner monologue and how they're experiencing things, how that deepens their connection. Sometimes it's just a girl screaming a guy's name, you know.
But
So
I think like there's a space, I feel like, in this genre to have more in-depth experiences and conversations and showing a little bit more around the whole sex thing, right? But there's also stories that are there just to be hot. I've found Barbarians, The
yeah,
Losers, Erotica. That's all they're
yeah,
there for. I mean, granted, with The Losers, it was also showing, you know, experiences with BDSM, which I feel like not a lot of people would know about.
yeah,
But there are stories that are there that just acting to be that, which is fine. But I do feel like there is a space where we need people to jump in a little bit and show a little bit more of, again, some vulnerability, some like communication, some, you know, conversations a little bit more, rather than just the normal heterosex, or even with queer as well, although queer's a little bit more they sort of delve a little bit more into these kind of conversations. But yeah, it's just usually just, oh, this is it, this is what it is, this is what it's hot, rather than actually going like, oh, you know, we can have a conversation about this little thing and then it'll be
yeah,
fine. And then yeah,
yeah.
well, it's been an
Completely.
hour.
It has. We got through all the bullet
um,
points, though. We got through all the bullet
we
points. We
we
should be
did.
so proud of ourselves.
I know,
In the
considering
trial
we
run of
tried to
this,
get
it took
in
us 3 hours to not cover all the bullet points.
Yeah, we're not even joking, that literally is what happened. But even if you didn't catch the live and you are watching the replay, tell me your comments below, or your thoughts. And I'm really glad that some of you came and hung out with us, listened to talk about sex for an hour.
Yep.
And Faye should be linked in the description below. Everybody should go follow her. And I hope you have a lovely evening. I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Yep. See ya.